wanted to be in the entertainment record business. So whatever I have to do, that's what I did. And like I said, I started off, it was actually lower than an intern because I was a temp employee. I wasn't even an intern. And so I did that. Yeah, I did that. I mean, I took a pay cut. So, but fortunately, like, I was living at home, so it wasn't that huge of a deal because I wasn't doing everything on my own. So, but once I started off in A&R, I just knew that wasn't it. That wasn't it. So I thought about promotion, and then that wasn't really me either. And then when I ended up leaving Capitol Records, and I went to SBK Records, which was a new company part of Capitol Records, and I stayed there. And within that, I knew that I wanted to do PR because at that moment I got to work in each department, and I realized PR was it. So that was the moment that I knew that I wanted to do PR. I left SBK and I went to Rogers and Cowan, which is now Rogers and Cowan PMK, is one of the premier PR firms. So it's like the Harvard of PR. So I learned then. I was there for 10 years. So I really enjoyed it. And that's when I knew that I wanted to do PR. I had a very good experience. I did a lot of, we did the Grammys Awards, we did BET Awards, in and every music event that was to be done. We did it at Rogers and Cowan. So, and that led to other things and to me being where I am right now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Nice.
A great journey. I like it. I like that none of us ever knew we were going to be where we ended up. I think that's going to be a common thread. So a great educational tidbit. Whatever your plan is, everyone's laughing at you. You never know. I started as an intern at Atlantic Records in radio promotions, which I thought I was going to love. And after a summer of feeling like a used car salesman, I was like, I do not like this whatsoever, actually. But I knew I really wanted to be involved in the music industry. I'm a pretend musician at home. I think the only person who can bear to listen to the music that I play is my husband because he has no choice. But because I don't have the talent myself, but I'm so passionate about it, I knew I wanted to be around it. So when I graduated college, I was unable to get a job in the music industry, but I was able to get a job at an accounting firm that had all music industry clients. Oh. And I thought, what a great way, at least to be able to understand the industry from the inside out. Because if I could follow the money, I could figure out how they were spending, what makes money, what doesn't make money. I got a real education on how to read royalty statements and do royalty audits, which made me a very valuable employee in the future. Because it's not a skill that they teach in college or high school or accounting.
Nothing.
So when I left the accounting firm because 50 and Shabani, who's managing him at the time, asked me to, and I figured it was something I couldn't walk away from. You know, it was always a dream to work at a label.
Excuse me, Sharon, what was the name of the accounting company?
It's called LL Business Management. It's located,
yeah, Bruce Seckendorf. Bruce Seckendorf.
So Bruce Seckendorf gave me my first job.
Okay. I worked with him every day.
Oh, there you go.
Some of my clients.
Small world.
Yes.
The industry is very small.
Yes.
It appears large from the outside, but that's certainly not the truth.
Exactly.
So I spent a long time at G-Unit Records, and I was ready for a change. We were past the point where Chris Lighty had passed away, and 50 was sort of self-managing, and our small label staff had stepped up and were doing a lot more day-to-day management. I was on the road a lot. And it just wasn't for me after a while. I really wanted to change pace and a different lifestyle. So this opportunity fell in my lap, to be entirely honest. And Hofstra's my alma mater. I got my first master's degree there. Just wrapped up my MBA there also. And it was a great time for me to give back and to give students all the knowledge that I can. And it's also a great place because I'm continuously learning. I learn from my students. They teach me things all the time, and getting to participate in panels like this and learn from other panelists. I'm a lifelong learner. I believe there's always something new out there that you can teach yourself. So again, thanks so much for having me. And I can't wait to hear how Robert became an attorney.
My turn. Okay. So my story is a little interesting. I'm a graduate of Yale University, and the first day that I excuse the noise in the background, but the first day that I came on campus to move into my dorm room. So I had a station wagon with my parents, and I'm taking out my clothes, and I had like a carton of vinyl records. And then this U-Haul truck parks up behind me with these two brothers in there. They come out, and then they proceed to take out like about 10 crates of vinyl records. So I'm looking at my vinyl records, I'm looking at these guys, and I said, hey, what do you guys do? Like, why do you have all these records? Says, oh, we're a DJ and we just got into Yale. We're freshmen, and we're gonna go and do parties for the college and also for the New Haven communities. I was like, wow. Long story short, I ended up being a DJ on WCFM, the college radio station, with these guys, right? But what really caught me, and I was pre-med when I first got to Yale. I was going to be a doctor. My parents are Haitian, so if you know Haitian culture, somebody is going to be a doctor.
Yeah.
Somebody is going to be a doctor, right? It's just how it is. And I love science, love it to this day. But what ultimately got me thinking seriously about the music business was I took a course on Black culture that was ironically taught by a white professor. And the premise of the course was that American culture is created by or very heavily influenced by Black people. So at that time, to show you my age, I'm coming home during the summers, and hip hop was very much in its infancy. And I would go up to the Bronx to go to these parties that my parents would not want me to go to, but it was like hip hop party where, you'd have these parties literally in the school auditorium. You'd have a DJ, on stage, and it was really an interesting thing. And then, you on the street, everybody's breakdancing and doing all kinds of stuff. Anyway, so as it turned out, I decided that I didn't want to be a doctor, and so I was thinking about I want to be a DJ at WBLS-FM in New York, which was the premier Black radio station in New York.
Yeah. And
a lot of record label executives would come to my radio station to ask me to play records, right? Or promo people like Sylvia Rohn, Sharon Haywood, or whatever. And I developed a relationship with them, and they suggested that I think about going to law school. And I said, well, why law school? They said, well, a lot of record labels are run by lawyers and Black attorneys, and I wasn't really aware of that. And I said, well, what does it take to be a lawyer? And I said, well, you got to be able to read. I'm like, I checked that box. I think I can read pretty well. You got to be able to write. All right, click, check that box. And then you got to be able to think. I'm like, well, I was a majored in psychology and philosophy. In philosophy, I took logic courses. I'm like, oh, I could do that. So long story short, I ended up going to Columbia Law School. But so the pivotal moment was becoming a DJ and then taking that course. I said to myself, well, I want to work in a business, the product of which is primarily created by Black people. And that's the music business. It still is. And so that's how I ultimately became an attorney. I became an attorney because, again, that was a means to an end for me. It wasn't a passion to be an attorney, but it was the way for me to get into the music business. Of course, when I graduated from law school, I couldn't get in, just like Sharon was saying, you just can't automatically go into the music business. I was a corporate lawyer for 2.5 years, and long story short, ultimately ended up getting a job with Aasha Records. And like you, Monica, I took a salary cut, but I also stayed at home, and I was at Aasha for about a year. That was the home of Whitney Houston. And then I met a guy named Andre Harrell, may he rest in peace, he just passed. He was starting a startup called Uptown Records. He had me come on board as the vice president and general manager. The best 3 years of my life, we signed Jodeci, Mary J. Blige, FBD, Guy. Then I went to work for another company by a guy named Eddie F. He had a company, we had a joint venture with L.A. Reid, LaFace Records. And we had a group called Intro, Danielle Jones, and Pete Rock and CL Smooth. Went to work with an attorney named Louise West, and collectively we represented Timbaland, Missy Elliott, and Genuine. Been out on my own since 2000. And represented folks like PD Pablo, 3LW. I ended up co-managing a group called City High that was signed to Interscope. We had a nice little run. And, you know, then Napster came, kind of almost destroyed the business.
Everything away.
Luckily, I wasn't married and didn't have any kids. So I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna have to tough it out. And then when iTunes came, it kind of stemmed the damage to some degree. And then when Spotify came, it's been like a sea change. And so I've had a chance to represent, I was like, still do Designer, the late XXXTentacion and Pop Smoke, Tekashi 6ix9ine, Stay Solid Rocky, and a bunch of other folks.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, guys, for that. So then our next question, I feel like this is kind of appropriate, especially if everybody gave that great history. Yes. So rumor has it that record labels do not indulge in artist development. So we wanted to get your response and see if, hey, is that still true or, yeah. So what are your thoughts on artist development if record labels are still able at this point in time to develop incoming artists?
I mean, I could start and let you know that artist development budgets looked very different when I started in the music industry compared to what they look like now. Yeah. I don't want to say that artist development doesn't exist, because I think there are really amazing A&Rs that get in the studio and do work for a really long time to perfect the sound, to pick the right production. But I think the years of meet an artist, get them a personal trainer, put them on a diet, craft their image with all of these stylists, go through multiple iterations of photo shoots to pick, I think those days are over. And I think, while that's sad in a sense, I also think that the labels are smart because they want you to go do your own artist development, get your own fans, use all the tools at your disposal so that you know who you are as an artist by the time they sign you. So I think even though it's evolved and it may not seem as desirable and sexy as it used to be, I think we've put a little more responsibility on the artists to go out there and grow their fan base and understand who they are. And I think that gives them the work ethic they need in this current climate to succeed. So that's just my opinion.
Now, I'm gonna piggyback what you said, and I believe that's the same thing. Gone are the days of Motown where they work like literally like dogs to make it work and make it happen. And social media has really changed a lot of artist development, because as a publicist, I know it changed what I do as a publicist, because it's all about, I'm the liaison between the artist and whoever they want to talk to. And sometimes I'm the liaison between them and the executives at the company. So a lot of times they talk through me. And like you said, that artist development is not what it used to be, but as I feel, and which I'm pretty sure we'll touch on later, that social media has a lot to do with how each of us change what we do and how we do it with our clients, with the artists. Our whole interaction has changed because of that, because the client artists, they have the firsthand, they can talk to their clients like that. At 2 a.m, they can email somebody back. 2 a.m, they can DM somebody. And that's something that was never done in the past. So I think artist development and social media go hand in hand with why it's different and why it's evolved to where it is now.
Again, to piggyback on that, I think it's important for the listeners to understand, or the viewers, I should say, to understand why there's no artist development anymore. And that's really stems from the fallout from Napster. Because, you know, when I worked at Arista, Whitney Houston, as we later found out, was not as polished as she was portrayed. She was quite ghetto, right? But
just a little.
There was just a little bit, but there was an artist development.
Bobby, stop blaming Bobby.
Right, exactly.
No, right?
Right.
Thank you.
There was clearly,
Sharon,
you know, there was a real development, you know, from what she was wearing, you know, how she was answering questions. I mean, that's part of artist development. Obviously, making the records. So what happened is, just so everybody has a context, Napster comes along, and if those people who don't understand who Napster was, or they're too young to remember,
Yeah.
It was a software that was created by this guy who had Sean Fanning, who had way too much time on his hands. And what it did, it allowed fans to share music online. So if I bought a CD, I would then download it to my computer. This music would go all, on the computer, and then I could share it with other people. So my friends didn't have to go and buy the CD. So that was happening in a very big way. And there were other piracy sites that were coming up. So now the music industry is hemorrhaging money, losing money. And the record business model, when I and Monica and even you, Sharon, when we got into the business, the record labels would go and they would sign 10 artists. They only needed one artist to sell and be successful, because that would make up for the other 9 artists that were whack or that they lost money on, right? So once it was like, oh, we're not making any money. Well, and then the labels were like, well, we can't afford, first of all, it's clear that we don't really have a good track record in picking artists, right? Because 9 out of the 10 artists that we sign are not going to be successful, or we're not going to get our money back. So let social media, so now we're not spending any money on artist development. It's not. It's a line item in our budget. We're gonna let social media dictate to us artists that are popular, and then we'll go and do a deal with those artists. So if you look at a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being you're a brand new artist, you could sing or you could rap, and 10 being you're a superstar, as Sharon was saying, if you're able to get yourself to maybe a 4 or a 5 out of that 10, that 1 to 10 scale, record labels who all have research departments, they hire folks that are on the computer, on SoundCloud, on Spotify, trying to see a new artist and see if they're breaking. The labels say, oh, you got up to 4 and 5 on your own. We're going to do a deal with you because we can take you from 4 to 5 to 10, right? So as Sharon and Monica said, incumbent in all that is you have to figure out who your audience is, have a sense of who your fans are, right? But the only problem that I have is there's still, unfortunately, because there is no artist development or really true A&R, you have a lot of artists that are coming out, they may have a hit record today and they're gone tomorrow. So there's no artist development.
So thank you so much for that. So our next question, so speaking of artist development, go ahead, Dan.
Has there ever been a time that an artist, their image or maybe their character might have influenced whether or not you guys decided to work with them, or if you decided not to work with them? I know, Rob, you work with somebody right now whose image is a little up there. So has that ever influenced you guys as opposed to just if you decide you don't want to work with them, or if you do want to work with them?
Almost definitely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Monica.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm most definitely, because obviously what I do as a publicist is all about image. It's all about brand. So I have to figure out at the same time, do I want to work with that person and I can see enough in it that I can even help increase the brand, or sometimes you have to be selfish and think about yourself. So as a publicist, do I want to be part of this? And so there's so many elements that go into whether you decide to take a client as a client. And like I said, I've been in this business since the late 80s. And I have yet to have somebody that I have said no from the start. Now I have said, I have gone and left and, decided to part ways with clients while we were working. I've done that. But to say no at the beginning, I always think there's a slim opportunity that we can work together. When I see that it's not going to work, then you have to nip it in the bud right then and there, because at some point it becomes about you and your brand. But I always try to work within artists, because sometimes they're so new, they don't even realize that could hurt their brand. So my job is to actually help them to understand, if you do this, that's what's going to happen. I had one client who I love working with, and he taught me a lot too. When I was back at Rogers and Cowan, back in the days when I was actually working with with actresses and actors on a daily basis, I was working with Chris Tucker, and he's one of my favorite clients at that time. And one of the things that he taught me is that always tell me why I'm doing something. And once you get like that, then it's easier to deal with them. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But I did learn that I should always be straightforward with the client and whether or not that is a brand that I want to be with.
And I know to some extent I can answer. I do have some controversial clients. Obviously, you know, I know them on a personal level, so I see a side of them that other people don't see.
Exactly.
But even having said that, I am not their manager or their PR. I'm their attorney, and I represent these clients on a transactional side. I'm not his criminal attorney. I'm not, he has, some of my clients who have had some problems with the law, and always there's two sides to the story, but they have, counsel that represents them in that aspect of the legal system. My job is to represent them on a transactional basis, negotiate the recording agreements, publishing agreements, et cetera, everything related to their music career. So I don't really try to judge necessarily how they're perceived or whatever, because again, when I talk with them and kind of know the inside scoop, they're very different people. And I've learned firsthand that you can't always believe what you hear in social media and all that, right?
Exactly.
Now, if a client asks me, I've developed some relationships with clients that goes a little bit beyond just the attorney-client privilege. And, they talk to me and they ask me certain questions or they ask my advice on non-legal stuff. I do my best to give them the best advice possible, but that's not really my primary job. So if a client comes to me and says, hey, and I have a lot of clients that, to the extent that they can pay me a retainer or to the extent that they're trying to put records out, that kind of thing, it's questionable. I call them street, let's put it this way. I call them street entrepreneurs. Right? So, I can't judge them. I don't have any clients that tell me, hey, Bob, could you hold this package for me? Somebody's going to come pick it up next week. No, I don't have any of that stuff, right? It's just, here's what I need you to do. Here's my fee. Here's your invoice. You know what I mean? Like everything is above board. So, to the extent that I can help young people, take a negative and turn it into positive by getting involved in music business, then I think that's a good thing for me to do.
I think we all know 50's No Angel and GENEUS put out lots of gangster hip hop, right? I'm actually from Queens. So, what they were doing and hiring their friends when they came home and trying to help the homeboys out, I'm 100% morally behind that. And the decisions that the artists make and their entourage makes, I worked for the company, right? So my job was to protect the financial interest of the company. My job was not to make some sort of ethical decisions about their personal lives or the way they conduct themselves. Now, if I was ever asked to do something that I felt was unethical on behalf of the company, I would have walked away right away, right? Because that's on me and that's my personal brand. That's my ability to have my own livelihood. I'm not going to catch a case for a job. Like, that's crazy. You have to be smart about what you do. But I also think standing in judgment of the people you work with and your clients is not going to do you any good, right? You have to find a nice avenue where you can both function and feel comfortable and get the work done and have that separation. So I would always say, like, draw the line at what you're willing to do, and that affects you professionally, right? But otherwise, we're all humans. No one's perfect. So we all also need to do a little bit of minding your own business.
Yeah.
Hey,
Damn, Sharon, tell me how you feel.
listen, that's a real answer. Real answer. So going into, so
And
piggybacking
that's all I do.
off of all of your answers. So now, when you are looking for artists and you're looking for or clients, now that social media plays a big role, right? What factors or methods that you're using, and on top of that, what are you looking for when you're getting ready to pick that client or artist? Are you versus a person that's 500K on their social media or 5,000K or 2,000K, and they're raw talent? What would you do?
Okay, so as a lawyer, it's kind of irrelevant, right? Because the client comes to me, clients find me more so than I'm looking for clients,
Okay.
right? I get a lot of referrals and social, Instagram, social media, people reach out to me. So my criteria for representing a client depends on what it is that they ask me to do. I have fired clients. I'm firing a client in a minute because they retained me, but then they weren't, they're not really listening to my advice and signing stuff without telling me that they're signing it, And so I don't really want to be associated with that client from a legal perspective, because if someone down the road looks at the paperwork that they sign and say, oh, Bob, how did you let your client sign this? Like, I didn't. And so since the client's not going to listen, I will fire the client. Now, because I was a manager, and maybe there's people that are viewing that were managers, and I've also run record labels, and I'm currently thinking about working with an artist on a creative side. The things that I look at is first and foremost the work ethic of the artist, right? A lot of artists that talk about they want to be artists, and then they don't want to put the work in, they don't want to put the sacrifice. And I like an artist that says, hey, I'm working and I'm taking some of my own money and I'm going to, shoot a video, or I'll put up half, and, if you can put up half, that's fine. Like, to show that, hey, I really want this. I really want this opportunity, and I'm going to work hard to get it. Now, obviously, you hope that they're talented, right? And so that's important, because to some degree, talent still matters, at least long-term. In the long-term success of an artist, talent still matters. But if they're not willing to work hard, if they're not willing to make sacrifices, they're letting their boyfriend or girlfriend get in the way. If you have to call them, right? If you have to call them to say, oh, Monica set up an interview for you, you need to be, available to do it, and you have to call them, ask them to do it. Or as everyone has said, social media is very, very important. And so an artist has to be very involved on the social media. So they don't want to post on their Instagram on a regular basis. They don't want to get on YouTube and do what they're supposed to do. That's not an artist that if you're a manager and you're watching this, or you're a production company, or you're an investor and you're looking to get into the game, it might not necessarily be a good thing for you to invest in this particular artist if they exhibit these kind of, behaviors early on.
Yeah, from my perspective as a publicist, which really what I go by is, number one, do I even like the artist? Because at this point, I can do that. But before, when I was actually with a company, I was working with what I was assigned. So I didn't have a problem with that, because I was always in either R&B or rap division. So, and that's the type of music that I like anyway. So it worked hand in hand. But now I'm at a point where if I really don't feel that it's not interest of me, I don't take the client. But I definitely have to, like what they're doing. Or if they're new and emerging, I can see it. I said, okay, I think we can go somewhere with this. But I have turned down countless people. And I always say, if you don't have anything to talk about, what would you like me to publicize? I need something to publicize. And I always, a lot of times when it comes to promotion, I said, I cannot publicize what's not being promoted. And that's my job, because there's like elements for PR. And if you don't fit those two elements, you know, promotion and talking about something, then I can't help you. And you know, I'm not a magician. I can't will things to happen because you like them. We have to understand the consumer, and I consider myself a consumer. And so if I'm interested, there's a good chance a lot of people are interested, but I always have to remember, not everybody likes what I like, but at least you have to have something there that other people want to listen to, read, try on, something, you know, something that the consumer is going to like. If you don't have anything that's going to bring the consumer in, then you're not going to get very far. And then at that point, and I will tell people, I said, this is, you know, the elements that you need to do in order to make it work, and come back to me. But I just can't take people's money, it's a struggle for me to get somebody on the phone. I can't do that. It's not fair to that person, and it's not fair to me either. So I always have to have something to talk about, and then we can at least move. We've got that hurdle out of the way.
Okay. Thank you.
So I just want to know, when you guys were with labels, whose best interest did you have? Was it the artist or was it the label? So like when you guys are like, Bob, as a lawyer, like you were with labels. So do you have like the best interest? Like, do you care what's going on for the artist, or is it like, all right, we really care for what's going on for the label? And
well, so when you're an attorney, you have a obligation to look out for the best interest of your client. Sometimes you have to look out zealously for the best interest of your clients.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So in other words, another way of looking at this is that an attorney and a manager also is what's known as a fiduciary, right? So I have to look out for the best interest of the client. So, and it also depends on who's retaining me. So I have represented and worked for record labels and their legal departments. And so understandably, my job is to look out for the best interests of the record label, right? If I'm representing production companies or small independent labels, in representing them, I always advocate to my clients that they be fair, right? Let's do a fair agreement, because once the artist becomes successful, you don't want them, you know, looking at the agreement and saying, oh my God, you guys really were unfair to me, right? Now, are they going to get the same type of deal an artist that has been successful will get? No, because if I'm an independent label or a production company, I'm going to take my hard-earned money and invest in you. And I'm not certain, or I'm not sure that I will get my money back. So in the very beginning, understandably, the contract will lean to some degree more advantageous towards the record company, until such time as the artist has shown that they are successful, and now the record label or the production company or the investor has gotten their money back. Now, before the artist asks you, I always tell my clients, you should go to the artist and say, hey, did really well, you're successful. We want to talk about renegotiating the terms of the agreement and making some of the terms more favorable to you. Now, if I'm representing the artist, I'm obviously looking out for the best interests of the artist, and I'm negotiating against a record label, and I'm trying my best to make sure that I get the best deal and the best terms for the artist. And my ability to get the best deal for the client these days, well, even back in the day, is based on my leverage. And my leverage comes from how successful the artist is. And when I mean successful, I should say how big their fan base is, what kind of a buzz they have, they have a record that's gone viral, which is great, or YouTube that's gone viral. And then how many record labels or production companies are now trying to bid for the artist? So if I have a scenario, which I've had almost every deal these days, when I have a client and more than one record label wants to sign the client, it now gives me as the attorney leverage to negotiate a better deal for the artist than I would have if only one record label was interested. Understand? Got it? Cool.
I have a very different outlook because I worked for a record label owned by the marquee artist on the record label. So 50 was originally signed through Interscope, the Shady Aftermath deal, and then eventually after we sold enough records through GUnit, we opened GUnit Records, which was a joint venture, and then eventually was an independent record label. So when the marquee artist runs the show and signs your paycheck, the marquee artist gets everybody's attention all the time, and you drop anything for that artist. And, you know, as a director of finance for a record label, it's a tricky spot because, you know, my obligation is to say financially, these are the things we should prioritize based on our return on our investment. But it's really hard to say that when the artist who signed your paycheck is like, I don't care, I want to go for it. So, you know, that's a tough balance. And actually, before I took the job at Hofstra, I was courted by Parkwood Entertainment, and I sort of knew in the back of my head that was probably a similar setup. I know Beyonce's not signed her own label or management company, but she does run the show there, and I knew she would always be the priority, and hey, like Queen Bee should be. It's very few artists, I think, that are going to come in our time that should get prioritized over an artist like that. But you know, I had to sort of tug a finer line than most, and it was a tricky position to be in.
Yeah. Well, I think mine is different than both, because since I'm on my own, every client is a priority to me. Everybody's a priority, every client. Now, back when I was at a record label, that was a fine line, because I knew the artist was important, but as all three of us know, working at that record label, you work who they tell you who the priority is. And so even though I like this artist and I knew we could do it, I mean, there's a couple of times I got called in and said, Monica, the priority is blah, blah, this artist. I'm like, okay, and I know, because I'm on the phones every day and I can see the response I'm getting from this, you know, for this artist, but that's not the priority. The priority is this artist. So I'm like, okay. And so sometimes I would come in a little early to do this on this artist because I saw it. And, you know, and that's the fine line that I had to deal with when I was at a record label. Now, what's really good about being at a PR firm, you get it's like you're your own too, because you're independent. So it was really nice that I prioritize who I work with. So working for an independent PR firm and being an independent person, they're really hand in hand. So those are the two elements that I love. And so the client is always my first, last, and always priority right now. But when at the record label, I had to do what they told me to do.
Thank you guys so much for that answer. So due to time, we're gonna ask some questions, and we're gonna get one response each. Whoever wants to pick it, you can just say, I'll take it. So our next question is that so we got the artist, right? You look for the artist, you have the artist, all right, they're signed. Who is now handling the financial responsibilities when it comes to the artist or the management? So studio time, touring, merchandise.
I can speak to this because I came from finance.
Yeah.
So the record label is a bank, essentially. And when they sign an artist and they give an advance, that's a loan. And it is the artist now responsibility with their manager, and mostly their manager, to attend label meetings and to make sure that that budget that the label just freely spends on whatever crazy marketing ideas they have or crazy promo ideas they have are actually working, and that the dollars and cents that they're charging to your account that you will have to earn, you will have to recoup the label will have to recoup every dollar before you will see one. So, the manager really needs to step in and watch that label spending. Now, also, I'm sure, I know in the interest of time, we're not all going to speak on this, but Robert can tell you, some attorneys can be very specific with the record agreements with the major labels about how much they can spend, so that you can try to prevent them from, spending every last dollar and you never get out from underneath it. Some artists have 360 deals, meaning a piece of all of their income, from their merchandise to their touring, a piece of that goes back to the label. I would recommend artists try to not sign those deals when humanly possible. I know it's not always an option, they're not always on the table, but because I think artists should retain their touring money. Artists should retain.
Oh, I do too.
Because that's their livelihood, right? And right now they're all struggling, but the primary way for an artist, I think, to have financial longevity and to be able to secure a nice nest egg that could be carried down through their grandchildren and great-grandchildren would be to hit the road a lot and save all of that touring money.
Okay.
So let me just add to this real quick. A couple of things. And I think it's important. I know, Sharon, you said that in essence, it's a loan. You got to be careful with that term, because it's not, the reason it's called an advance and not a loan is because a traditional loan, like if you take a loan out and buy a house, what happens if you don't pay back that loan? What happens is they'll go take that house, they'll garnish your wages, whatever the case may be. So that's why that word is not used in legal contract. It's an advance. The record is advancing you money that they think you're going to make. And luckily for you as the artist, if you don't make that money back, if you don't recoup, as Sharon was saying, they're not going after your house, or maybe you've got some side businesses. A label's not going to do that. What they will probably end up doing is dropping you, right? So a lot of times I've had clients come and say, oh, I don't want an advance because I don't want to have to pay it back. And I'm like, no, you do want to get an advance. You want to get as much money up front as you can. Yes, you have to recoup it. But if you can have, high 6 figures or 7 figures in your account now, well, if the record label doesn't make that, let's say it's $1 million advance, they don't get that $1 million advance back, oh, well, that's a risk that they take. So just want to have a caveat with that word. Yes, you have to recoup it, but it's not a personal loan such that if it's not paid back,
you have to
an issue.
Yeah.
So if they want to give you money, take the bag.
That's what that takes, the money.
So just a piggyback question. So of course, Kanye has been in the news, I guess, all summer long. But the most recent is where he basically gave a breakdown or in talking about like how artists should be able to own masters and get 50% off the back, like he's gonna give 50%, like, and he gave like a full breakdown when it comes to the attorney, when it comes to
look at Robert.
Yeah, at least Robert, really quickly, I want to get your take on it since you.
I mean, look, it sounds great, and yes, look, there's two ways you have to look at this. If I'm spending money to put you in the recording studio, and I'm spending money to pay for the producers, and I'm spending money to clear samples, and I'm paying money to get the guest feature and all that on the record, I'm gonna own the masters. Now, so people have to understand that, like, hey, they're putting up the money. If you put up the money, you being the artist, and you go to a label and you say, okay, I own all the masters. I paid for everything. I just want you to distribute it. So you have companies like Empire, United Masters, companies like that are saying, okay, you keep your masters, we're going to distribute it, but you bring to us these records. You bring to us the music. It's a different conversation. Now, I've been able to negotiate certain deals that says, okay, now, because that is a movement for the artist to get the masters or the ownership of the masters, which, by the way, it's important. Don't get it wrong. It's great to own your own shit. But if you haven't paid for it, that you first have to give the investor, which is the record label, an opportunity to get their money back and not just get their money back, make a profit, right? If I give you $1 million, I don't want just the $1 million back. I want to get $1 million. I want to make 1.5 or 2 million. Now, after I made my 2 million, you're going to give me, you should have the right to be able to get the masters back. And so a lot of labels, again, once you have the leverage, there is a conversation being had where it's like, okay, I recently negotiated an agreement where the label owns the masters until they recoup. And then for a period of time, like 10 years from the time they recoup, they still get the right to get money. And then after that, the masters revert back to the artist.
Yeah.
So start seeing a lot of that. But I think that people need to understand, instead of making it seem like, oh my, like Kanye would not be where he is if the record labels didn't invest. And it's not just getting the recording costs, it's all the publicity, paying for radio promotion, billboards, shooting videos. All these are things that the labels are paying. Now, I'm not trying to put the labels as being saints in all this, because Sharon can tell you, because she's done a lot of royalty audits, where you got to watch them with eagle eyes, because they pay you X, A, but then they're gonna pay you B. No, A, right? But at the end of the day, I'm not really with the villainizing of these record labels, like, oh my God, they're all evil. And I myself had a little independent record label back in the day where I had to spend my own money, and I'm like, oh, and I didn't make my money back. I was like, oh, so this is what record labels is. One thing when you're a lawyer and you're theoretical and you're going through the agreements, whatever. Another thing when you spend your own money, put the record out, doesn't make any money, and you're like, oh, now I understand what they're talking about, because it's practical. So, but ultimately, if you can be in a position where you can own your masters from the outset, that is a much better deal, because down the road, if you're successful, those masters can be sold for a lot of money.
Yeah, I always tell.
Changing
I'm sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead, Monica.
Now, what I was just one side note, and artists should understand this is a business. It's not called music business it's a two-word. It's a business first. And I always tell my artists, this is a business, you should learn it. I mean, sometimes you should just take a course in college so you can just learn just little words that can help you, when you're dealing with other people in this business. But this is a music business, and it's treated as a business. And that's what they should learn and understand. So when people are talking to them, like their attorney, their manager, their publicist, even the salesperson, whomever, learn what things are and learn what words mean. Because if not, you're going to get taken. And I always suggest, always know music publishing. I know we haven't talked about that, but always learn music publishing, because that will really help you understand music. I had the gift of working for, not only when I was working at SBK Records, it was tied into EMI music publishing. So I learned record business from the record side as well as music publishing at the same time. And so that's an element that the artist should know as well, music publishing, because that helps you too. Because I would say that's your retirement money. Learn it.
So question, with to kind of piggyback as far as learning music publishing and always obviously being educated when it comes to the music business, with certain contracts, why aren't they in just plain English?
About publishing agreements and
Kanye posted the other day the agreement with his masters with Jay-Z, and supposedly Jay-Z owns Kanye's masters. And I'm reading the agreement and I'm just like, I don't know what I read.
Oh, Robert, they're trying to put
That's why you have Robert. He went to a whole bunch of school to write it like that.
because at the end of the day, every industry has their kind of language.
Yeah.
That there's a language of business, and every term you see in a recording. Look, in the very beginning of the music business, you'd have a contract that was one page, right? What happened is the artist would find some way to get out of that contract, right? Something would happen, for example, you had an artist that would claim bankruptcy. I'm bankrupt, right? And under bankruptcy law, any agreements that you enter into are discharged.
Yep.
So now the label's like, okay, you try to jerk us around. So now I don't spend $1 million on you. You claim bankruptcy. So now I'm out of my $1 million. Right? After you don't reap the benefits. So now the next contract is going to have language about if you declare bankruptcy, it's not going to terminate the agreement. So I've seen contracts when I got into business, maybe the contract was like, I don't know, 15 pages long, something like that. Now contracts are 60, 75 pages long, right? And so that's why it's technical. There were movements early on to try to make it plain English.
Mm-hmm.
In doing so, there's still some legal things that are missing when you try to make it that simple. And also, attorneys don't want to, lose their jobs. So at the end of the day, that's part of it too.
To interpret what's being written on this contract.
Yeah.
Correct.
So I want to move into talking about a lot of the right now, of course, the pandemic has shifted the industry, right? So we have a lot of artists that are shifting to a lot of online social media with concerts, virtual concerts, a lot of merchandise. So do you feel, first of all, I guess this would be for Sharon. So you feel that, is it more profitable in the way that, because right now, I think there was the deal with Tidal is teaming up with Oculus, who's going to be working on virtual concerts. But of course, a lot of the ticket prices are going to be a lot lower than, of course, you go to an in-person concert, you're paying $200 and all this stuff. Do you feel that it's going to be more profitable for the future virtually? And also for merchandise, do we still need to incorporate merchandise in order to be profitable?
Well, I would say this is not sustainable, right? Like we all want out of this pandemic as fast as possible. The economic recovery across the entire United States and all of the industries are affected for the most part, right? So I don't think that what we're doing in COVID as a stopgap measure for artists to make money and put food on the table should be seen as a viable economic model for the future of music. I do hope some positivity comes out of it. If virtual concerts make it more affordable and accessible for people who normally couldn't afford to go to a concert, I think that's fantastic, right? But I think these are things that we're doing because there is no other option. I think people will love when live music and we're all able to be together again happens. Now I was talking to a friend of mine and it's not just, we're like, oh, we can't go to a concert, but a lot of music industry professionals actually work in live. They make their entire livelihood. You have tour managers, you have studio musicians, you have, roadies, there's just so many pieces on those tours and in the live music arenas. There's so many employees who are hurting right now. And so I don't want to see, virtual concerts take the place of what I think is also a really magical connection between the fans and the artists. That live show is where, you have these incredible experiences, you share them with your friends, you meet new people. I met my husband at a concert. I think
you do drugs.
Whatever you do recreationally on your own time, says the place. I think I think they're doing the best they can.
Yeah.
Monica, this is going for you. So with recent events with I don't know if you guys paid attention to Jaguar Wright's her rants. She had a whole rant yesterday.
Who's this?
Yeah.
Jaguar Wright?
Yeah.
So,
What little story, I represented her when I was at MCA Records.
Right. Tell me give me a lowdown. What rants is she doing now?
So she had a rant yesterday when she was outing, I don't want to say the names, but she was outing an artist. She was speaking about other artists. It was just a lot of messiness.
It was just really negative.
Yeah. It was a lot of messiness. So as someone who's in public relations, how would you handle that situation? And even as an artist that she's speaking about, should they address her? Should they just ignore it? Give her like a cease and desist of defamation of character or what?
Well, first of all, it depends on what it is, because a lot of things you really can't ignore. You really can, because a lot of times people want to go back and forth. And I always tell clients that's never the route to go. Never go back and forth. However, when there are situations such as what Jaguar did to the other people, number one, you have to calm down and don't respond so quickly, because if you respond in anger, it's even worse. But I do like just sometimes take a breath, take a breather, and I always tell them, tell it first, tell it all, and tell it last. Don't let someone else write your story. So you always have to come out with your version of what happened. And then a lot of times people know who you are, that they know that you wouldn't do that. And sometimes you just can't help but, people like, I don't like her, so I'm not going to believe her. But I always suggest, always have the right spokesperson, number one, to speak for you. And clearly that would be someone in my profession to speak for you. And now that there is social media, a lot of times I don't have to do that as much, because many times I write it and you say it, and we rehearse it and you say it exactly like it's written. Please don't go off script, because that's when things happen. And so once you make that statement, that's going to be your statement every single time it's asked. Don't veer, don't go to the right, don't go to the left. Stay with the story that you said. And once you do that, then eventually people will forget, but you always have to tell your story, and then you have to tell it all, because you don't want anybody, like I said, telling your story. And Jaguar, what happened is she ended up apologizing for that rant. And so at that moment, the person that she was ranting, the two people that I know off the top of my head, they didn't even respond. And that and in that, she ended up looking like the bad person, and she apologized. So that's, in that sense, it was good for those two people. You know what? I'm not going to say anything because I know it's not true. And sometimes defending it, you make it even worse. But a lot of times, certain elements in certain situations, you have to say something. In her case, they didn't say anything, and then she looked bad because she came back and I apologized. She's now doing the apologize tour, and that's never a tour you want to be on.
Apology tour. So speaking of tours, so so a lot of the artists that, or musician or anybody that's on here, we want to talk about the timing in which it takes to actually set up a tour, the planning and financial sources. So can you shed some light on that aspect?
You can go on tour with the van and your two homies, or you can go on tour with 3 stages because you're traveling so fast in between cities that you can't get it broken down and rebuilt in time. So there's a lot of levels to it. I think you're probably looking at least for what you would say a professional arena tour, you're looking at a minimum 8 months of preparation.
Yeah.
So you're going to meet with your tour manager, you're going to go through your vision, you're going to meet with your lighting guys, with your sound guys, you're going to have rehearsals, you're going to rehearse the set list, your band's going to come in, you're going to have dancers, you're going to have potentially pyrotechnics and other special effects going on. You need to have all of that stuff then figured out how they're going to erect it, break it down every night. How quickly can they get that cargo to the next city? Do you need 2 sets? Do you need 3 sets? If you're going international, there's withholding taxes. You have to make sure that you're not paying taxes to the governments of other countries, because you earn your money and you're a citizen of the United States. You need to pay your taxes back here when you get here. So there's also a bunch of legal paperwork and taxation issues that need to be sorted out before the tour starts. So I at minimum 8 months, I will tell you probably the first, second, third, and fourth night, you're just paying for all the other stuff.
Exactly.
You're not making money. So that the tour has to be long enough that all the expenses are actually going to then turn into a profit at some point. I have known some particular artists that we may have talked about tonight who have made no money on their tour because they went so elaborate with the set, and they went so elaborate with the stage, and had so many different people participating in the tour, moving them around city to city, hotel rooms every night, they came home and they're like, I didn't make any money. And it's like, right, well, you knew that was going to happen. We discussed that. The money it's not magic. It doesn't fall out of the sky just because you stood on stage and gave a show. So.
And we tell them that beforehand, because I come in at the end, my job as a publicist, I come once all of Sharon's job is done, I come onto the picture. I come in as PR and we work 3 months in advance, where hers is 8 months, where everything's all done. When I come in, everything's all done, and I'm 3 months, and I need the tour schedule, and I need to know what's going on, because I'm going in those cities. I need to always be 3 to 4 cities ahead, because when they get there, they have to do press. And trust me when I say they don't want to do that, and I'll never understand it. I'm always speechless when you don't. I say, excuse me, you don't want to do what? And there's long conversations, and Sharon will tell you that I have with these artists who don't want to do press, and I'm stunned.
That's why a lot of those artists are here today, gone tomorrow.
Exactly, stunned.
And I will also tell you though. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Finish, Monica.
No, I was going to say, Robert, and some of your clients have been my clients, and I had to cancel press days because you didn't think it was important enough to get up at 7 o'clock when I told you not to stay out the night before, because I told you what was going on. So when I say something's at 7 o'clock, you don't get up at 6:59. You're up at 5 o'clock because you have to be ready at 7 o'clock. Nobody understands that. It's just totally amazing.
But that goes to the work ethic question. And all
exactly. That's where I was
here today, gone tomorrow.
When you said it.
But in terms of the touring, my job is usually I'm the one drafting the live performance engagement agreements. Yeah. And and Sharon is right when she talks about the prep time, but it's usually for like major artists who have major rappers or major bands per se. In the very beginning of some of these, especially in the hip hop community, there's really not that much preparation, because you're not necessarily touring with a big band. It's just a DJ, and then you're making these little club runs, club runs, strip club runs, there's not necessarily a bunch of lead time as your fan base, but then when you definitely get a chance to blow up and get to that point where you're doing, arenas and things like of that nature, Sharon is 100% spot on that it's going to take months to get up and running. Yeah.
Sometimes it's been longer than 8 months. Like you said, depending on what it is. I remember TLC when they did the whole waterfalls. That was utterly chaotic, but a good chaotic, because there was just so much going on. People didn't understand, and that's when they did that video. Even when they did the video, that was like one of the first videos that was like 1 million, because of all of it, what it entailed to do. So people don't understand. It's a business. Learn it.
Yep.
Okay. So now this question I asked is that, of course we have all these artists that are trying to get their music heard. They're trying to get some type of placement. What resources, or how can you explain if an artist is able to either get radio play or sync placement for their music?
So radio play for a record, well, there's kind of two kinds of radio play. One is college radio, right? Easier to get on. Although college radio, I'm a little still would like to know how that works in the age of COVID. And then you have regular mainstream radio, in which you need to be able to hire a radio promotion or radio promoter that has relationships with the various program directors and music directors to go and solicit radio play, which is one of the reasons why you want to sign with a major label, because they have radio on lock at the end of the day. And radio is still one of the ways in which an artist really breaks mainstream. However, there's another component to this, where now you need to have a promotion person or company that has relationships with the DSPs, with Apple, Spotify, Tidal, and are able to pitch your music to the playlist, because the playlists are like a new, just another kind of, for all intents and purposes, like radio.
Yeah.
Right? Recently, TikTok, as much as it's been in the news by our ridiculous president, but TikTok is almost like radio in a sense, because if your record is on TikTok and the kids and the influencers are dancing to it, it leads to more streams, right? It leads to more streams, and that can, if your goal is to get a record label, a record label behind you, that's sort of a new artist discovery platform. And even for TikTok, these influencers get paid.
Yeah.
You'd have to find a marketing company that has a relationship with TikTok and the influencers, which means you need money.
Yeah.
All right. So with that being said, how can our artists actually get work on getting a wider audience?
I think all the answers are like in your cell phone and in your pocket, right? So you have to get it's one fan at a time. I have told this to every artist I have ever met, every independent artist. It is one fan at a time. You're going to take that picture, you're going to interact, you're going to follow them back, you're going to post compelling content, and you have to show, nowadays, you have to be super authentic and show your whole personality. So what you're cooking for dinner, guess what? You put your music on in the background. Now they're interested in what you're cooking for dinner. Maybe they're more interested in that than the music, but it's playing. So you have to constantly engage with every single thing.
It's the interaction.
Every free tool at your disposal.
And I always tell people, when someone's following you, follow them back. And then another time, if you follow somebody who's not following you, you follow them and they'll follow you back. So you have to, and I have no problem following people. Boop, boop, boop. I sure do. Because I sure do. If I like what they're doing, oh my goodness, that was funny. Boop. And you know what? They'll follow me back just because. So you like Sharon said, you have to engage, must engage.
So with artists, like I want to switch it over to like as far as like artists who do like covers and renditions of a song and maybe post it onto YouTube. So you know how with YouTube, after you get a certain amount of views, I guess you can make some type of profit of it. Are they entitled to any type of monetary gain? The artists who maybe the artist who wrote the song.
That's it.
The person who owns the masters are entitled to the royalties because they own the intellectual property. The artist who's doing a cover is basically helping them out. They're helping to promote the song that already existed. Now if you licensed the song, and Robert, you could definitely explain this better than I can, so you can take over.
Well, if you're going to cover another artist's song, which is a tool that a lot of R&B and pop singers have used as a way to build their fan base and to get the attention of a major production company, a major manager, and even a record label, right? So you go and do someone else's song, you hashtag it, whatever, there's a way to make sure that when people are looking up for that original artist, they see your cover recording pop up also. If you're not selling the song, but you still want to go and try to get a mechanical license, but just go to the Harry Fox agency and just get a mechanical license. You actually could sell it, actually, if you wanted to. You could put together a list of numbers and sell them. As long as you get the licenses now, as Sharon was saying, if you're re-recording the songs, which you'll do, but you're using the same lyrics and melodies of the song, then the publishers are going to get their mechanical royalty. And you can if you sell the records, you keep the sales, but more importantly, you're using it presumably to build your fan base up, right? So you can covers, as long as they're exact covers. Like if you start changing the lyrics around and all that, maybe you keep the hook, but then you want to change the verses, then what you've created is what's known as a derivative work, right? You created a new derives from the original. And for that, you then have to get permission from the writers, the publishers, to say, hey, look, I'm changing the lyrics of your song. Is it cool? And, you would hire a company to help you do that.
I always tell people when one of the things that I learned was really good when I was at a music publishing company, as well as when I started working at MCA Records, is the Grammy Awards. That is a pleasure of how how the music business is and who gets credit. And so one of the things that people always want to know, what's the difference between a record of the year and song of the year? Song of the year is a person who wrote it. That's the person who's truly getting paid. And record of the year is a person who sings the song. And a lot of times the record of the person who wrote it is the same person who is recording it. And so that's a duo. But many times there are always two different people, wrote the song and performed the song. So those are two different people. So that's how I always tell my artists, well, what's the difference? That's the difference. The song is who wrote it. The record is who performs it.
And just in terms of long-term profitability or long-term asset that you can pass on to your children is when you are able to write these songs. You able to write your own songs. Because the long-term game is publishing. Right?
That's your goal. That should be
Sharon said something about touring, which is true, but you may get to a certain point in your life, you're like, I don't want to go on the road anymore. I don't want to deal with going on the road, you know, I got to travel here and there, you know, time, you know, sometimes you get to that point, you know, if you're the Rolling Stones, you're like, well, I still want to tour, whatever. But for the artist at some point, it's like, all right, I'll tour maybe once a year, whatever. But if publishing money coming in.
Oh, that's the best. You're like I think I said it earlier. That's pension. That's your pension. Is your publishing.
Absolutely.
So I would say learn to write. Even rappers learn to write your own
rappers
rap.
are writers.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly. And there are some rappers who didn't know that in the beginning. Now most rappers, all of them, if not one or all of them, write their own rap. All of them learn how to write. One thing I didn't know until later on is Whitney. Whitney didn't write. Whitney, she didn't write.
Agreed.
And I was like, how could that be?
So, for example, one of her biggest records, "I Will Always Love You."
Oh, that was a big one.
Who's getting paid off that record?
Dolly Parton.
Oh, Dolly Parton.
Dolly Parton.
And you know what? They had, and it was, I was at Rogers and County when we did the Grammy Awards, and that was a beef that Whitney wanted to get paid as much as Dolly. And Dolly kind of laughed at it because we were Dolly Parton at the same time. And she was laughing like, what is she talking about? I mean, it was really cute how she said it. Like, Dolly couldn't understand. What is she talking about?
Exactly.
And Whitney was like, somebody needs to school Whitney. Like, you sung it. And yes, you made it what it is, but it's still her song. It's still Dolly. So she's raking in the money.
Yeah, the way Whitney would get paid was she was getting a royalty on sales of the record.
Exactly.
Which is different than the publishing of the record.
On the song, use of her voice.
Right?
Yeah,
so she
publishing
was
is everything.
Yeah, she was getting an artist royalty on sales. When the diminished, well, so did her income. However, Dolly Parton's song is being used, it's used in movies, it's this, it's that, whatever. It lives on, and she's incredibly rich woman.
Yeah, and we haven't even talked about using your song in a commercial. That's a whole different era of money. In a commercial, a jingle. That's how a lot of these artists are making money.
We need a part 2. So guys, thank you so much. So we're gonna wrap up to give it enough time for some Q&A from the audience. So our last question that we want to hit you guys with is that, of course, you guys have all these years of experience and you learned so much and you gave so much gems and advice on this panel today. If there are changes that, you would love to make to the industry, what would be any particular change that you would actually make?
Wow.
Wow.
Go first.
Oh, no. That's a very good question. I think we touched on it earlier. Like, obviously get, the 360 deals, let's not make that a habit. And then develop your artists so they can have longevity and publishing. Those are my 3, the artists be more engaged in publishing and learning what it means. Because that's, at the end, that's their pension.
So for me, I think, well, from a lawyer's perspective, I agree to some extent with what Monica's saying about the agreements. Although I will tell you, these days, these deals are very, very much more lucrative than they were financially, much more lucrative these up front than they were in the 90s. Surprising, right? I mean, my clients are getting high 6-figure, 7-figure deals, advances in their pockets. And when you're a 19-year-old kid and you got, you're a millionaire, like, that's very, very life-changing. But you know, if I wanted to see some changes, I think what I'd like to see is some type of artist development coming back, because I really feel like a lot of these clients, you know, aren't having in the right direction. Even the A&R that are on these labels, whose job it is or was to help develop the artist, not only just picking the records, but hey, this lyric doesn't make any sense. You got the hook says, you know, the sky is blue, but then you're talking about your car in the verses. It makes no sense.
Mm-hmm.
So because A&R these days, A&R used to, I know that's one of the questions. A&R used to stand for, or stands for artist and repertoire. But these days, A&R stands for arithmetic and research. Because that's exactly what these A&Rs not really, just looking on the internet, whatever. And, you know, so I like to see some artist development. I like to see the agreements be, you know, much more fair from the gate for the artist. I'd like to see all the agreements agree at some point that the artist could get the masters back. I think that would be dope.
Mm-hmm.
I
don't know if the 360 is going anywhere though.
Yeah, probably not. I would like to see more clarity on the royalty side for the artists. You know, Universal
Facts.
had a long run of their number one earning royalty statement said unknown artist, and that went on for a very, very, very long time, fighting to find out why that money sat in a pool. I think there should be sort of like a Library of Congress of all rights owners, so that people in the music industry can easily identify who wrote the song, who owns the master, who owns the publishing. I think that should be public record. I don't think there should be so many secrets. I don't think you should
like a central database, you said.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Congress of rights.
I agree.
So that we know. And then I think you shouldn't need a forensic accountant to fight for the royalties that you earn. And then I also would like a change of rhetoric. And I'm sorry I'm going on, but I get really preachy when people ask me this question. The music industry really started in the exploitation of Black people by people who look like me, and we use terms like master and slave to refer to the original disc that had the music on it and then the replications. And I'd like to see some of that really disgusting coded language erased from the industry, and I'd like to see more representation of people who look like the artists running the companies.
Damn. Tell them how you feel, Sharon.
And how do we miss that, Robert?
She's 100% right.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
100% right. 100%, Sharon. You're 100%
that's
right.
Where we are right now, attempting to get that done. And we don't even want to talk about the money allocated to pop music versus urban music. So anyway.
Facts. Very well said, Sharon.
I'll come back for a part two for this.
Yes, exactly. And it started with that one.
So guys, we're going to take two questions from the audience, and we have some questions from the Facebook Live as well. So one of the questions, I'm sorry, you want to go through that one?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
One of them was, what's the difference between like the publishing agreements? So what does a typical publishing deal entail?
So there are two types of publishing agreements. One is an admin deal where a company would say, all right, you wrote these songs. We are going to go out and get all the money the songs have generated, whether it's from record sales, or from streaming, from downloads. We're going to get the money that is being generated in Europe, you know, and we're going to collect that money for you. And we'll take a percentage. You own the copyright, and that's all we're going to do is collect the money. There's another agreement called a co-publishing agreement where the publisher is going to own, usually a major publisher, in return for a nice advance. They will own the copyright with you, go and administer and collect money on your behalf, and also do some other things such as help you exploit the composition by pitching your music for sync opportunities like Monica was talking about, helping in some instances to get your songs to various artists and other creatives, and overall provide opportunities to you as a songwriter, to help you become a better songwriter, and to help you monetize your copyright. And usually they'll own the copyright sometimes in perpetuity, but these days we're able to get a reversion of the copyright after a certain period of time back to the writer.
Okay. Great. Thank you so much for that. And we're gonna do pick one more question. So a lot of artists, as you see today, are seeing like everybody has merchandise. Do you feel it's very important to incorporate merchandise in anything pretty much as you're doing in the industry?
And even with music, because a lot of artists are putting, like, they sell their records with the merchandise.
Right. We got vinyls coming out, t-shirts, sweaters, everything.
Or you get a t-shirt, buy a t-shirt, you get
So as we moved away from physical sales, which had a much higher profit margin, and we moved into digital sales, which is a much smaller profit margin, which you understand because you pay way less for your download than you did for your CD back then. Artists had to come up with other ways to incentivize people to buy things. So we created these bundles in the industry, which was supposed to be this brilliant idea of you get the special poster and you get the t-shirt, which is the stuff you really want. And then you get the CD, which you're just going to digitize anyway. And that was to try to incentivize people to buy CDs. So that was sort of the catalyst of the bundle. And then now CDs are totally irrelevant. Unless you sell country music, people don't buy physical music. Only in country is that maintain some level of reliability for an income stream. Merchandise becomes even more important as your streaming revenues are smaller. Tour merchandising, I think, is vital because it's a great extra stream of revenue. And if you know somebody has enough money for the concert ticket and the beer and the transportation and the new outfit for the night out, they probably have an extra $30 for the t-shirt, and the profit margin on those are pretty large. So I encourage all artists, no matter how big or small, to get some merchandise, be an entrepreneur, use all of your resources to have as many streams of revenue as humanly possible for as long as your fans are willing to pay attention to you.
Exactly. I totally agree with both of you, Robert and
second that emotion.
Merchandising. Yeah, merchandising, it, like I said, any streams of income you can have, it helps, especially when you're up and coming and you really don't know. Yeah, merchandising.
And one last thing, merchandising, because it can ultimately lead to, a clothing line of some sort,
Yep.
Another way that once you as an artist have established a brand or a lifestyle that your fans can gravitate towards, then, you can, the merch is the first step towards, doing toys, maybe getting into like cosmetics business, obviously a clothing line of some sort. So yeah, it's a great starting ground to do that.
Okay. Guys, we just want to say thank you so much.
Yes.
I hope everybody that was listening.
I need that t-shirt though. Does that Danielle wear that t-shirt?
I know, right?
That's a great piece of merch right there. Send that to me.
Yeah, exactly.
Guys, we just want to thank you so much for coming on and really giving your knowledge, your expertise on the music industry. We really hope that the all the participants that had came in to really take some notes, really understand. We are going to definitely set up a part 2 to this if you guys are interested.
Yeah, let's do it.
We didn't
we have a lot more questions too.
Well, you know what? I think you can reach me via my email, and you ladies have my email. So if any participants wanted to get my email and ask any questions, I'm totally open to addressing anything. It's monica@PureWizEntertainment.com, and Wiz has 4 Z's in it. And the ladies have my email address, just in case I said it quickly. Okay.
Instagram handles.
Yes, and drop your handles if you're up to it.
Follow me on the gram @Bob Celestin. DM me.
On the gram, y'all.
Yes.
Okay.
So guys,
go to my website too, raclawfirm.com.
All right. So guys, once again, thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, for all those who have tuned in, thank you so much for tuning in. I know we were on Zoom, and also we did have the Facebook Live. So we were kind of like looking back and forth here. Everyone for all their for their participation, leaving all the comments, questions. So guys, definitely we appreciate everything. tune in for our segments. We do have Mondays. We have our Music Mondays, and then also on Thursdays we sit down every Thursday with an independent artist. We sit down, get their backstory, and we follow a lot of independent artists that's right in our backyard in the tri-state area. So guys, definitely continue. Thank you so much for the continued support. Yes. We appreciate you, and thank you for tuning in tonight, guys. If there's nothing else, all I can say is thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for really doing this panel for us, and we definitely look forward to speaking with you.
It was fun. Thanks for the opportunity, guys. Y'all be good.
Thank you, ladies. I really appreciate it.
All right.
Bye, guys.
Have a good night.
Y'all too.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Have a good one.